In today's Star Trek, the role of Chief Medical Officer goes far beyond sickbay. These doctors are navigating trauma, identity, artificial life, and the moral gray zones of 24th century medicine. From M'Benga's quiet strength to Culber's emotional resilience and to Anna's chaotic charm, this new generation of CMOs is redefining what it means to care in Starfleet. In this live stream, we ask the question, who would you want to take care of you in an emergency? Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things sci-fi. And today we are talking about the best doctors of New Trek. And I'm pretty excited for this conversation because I feel like part twos are always more complicated. Dustin, let me know your thoughts, because part ones, it's like so crystal clear the roles each kind of person plays. And part twos, like all the New Trek, it's a little more blurry. It's not as clear. And also for some of the shows, we don't even have any of these roles at all. And for other shows, it seems like multiple people do these roles. So I'm excited to talk about this today. Before we get started, though, I do want to welcome our special guests. Here we have returning guest and host of the Best of Trek YouTube channel, Dustin. We've also got host of I Love Bed Star Trek on YouTube, and that is Vanessa. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
We also have Josh from the Windgrace Project, who is backstage and will be on shortly. Currently, all I see is Pulaski. So Josh will be here shortly. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with the first doctor on our list. And also with a little, we'll kind of go over the qualifications for best doctor or good doctor again as well. Okay, welcome. Okay, so the first doctor on the list is Culber. And so here are the characteristics of good doctor that we're going to be judging by. We've got decisive under pressure, which means they make quick life or death decisions in a crisis. And we saw last week in part one, some of our doctors were really good at that. Some of our doctors had complete crises in their positronic nets when this happened. Blunt honesty, which again doesn't mean being rude, but it means always telling the truth. So not sugarcoating the things and giving your opinion. And then caring. So kind of more the empathy. Do they deeply care for the crew's well-being, which I think is really important for a good chief medical officer or a good doctor. So let's go Dustin, Vanessa, and then Josh. What are your thoughts on Culber on these three criteria?
I mean, I think he ranks pretty high in all of these categories, even when it's his own love in Stamets. He's decisive under pressure. He goes through those triage situations pretty evenly. Even though Culber, I don't believe, even in the early seasons, is the chief medical officer. We do get the most of him. I think Pollard's actually the CMO the entire way through. As far as blunt honesty, also very honest, and that kind of shapes later as he transitions to being more of the psychiatrist on the ship and the counselor than the doctor, where he's still honest with people and quite honest when they need to hear something, but isn't quite as blunt. So I guess he's not like a 5 out of 5 in blunt honesty throughout, maybe like a 3.5 or a 4. Caring, yeah, right up there, 5 out of 5. I mean, you see it both in his early just doctoring roles and definitely when he transitions to becoming the counselor. Very, very caring.
Yeah, so decisive under pressure, absolutely. Both personally and professionally, which I think when you're living on a starship, it pays to have those things to be mirrored. Blunt honesty, I think, like, not only must one be blunt with patients or straightforward manner in terms of like a prognosis or diagnosis and everything, I think like honesty with yourself is also key. And that's where I think Culber kind of struggles, because he like kind of will tell himself something in order to sort of push through a situation. And that's a little concerning as like somebody, if I was going to like staff him, like is he similar to sort of like Bashir? He kind of pushes himself past his limits, like of exhaustion, both emotional and physical. So I would sort of dock him a little bit on that, but I think he does have good bedside manner and is very straightforward with, you know, his medical jargon, and speaks to people on their level. Caring, yes, 5 out of 5. Like Dustin said, yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to sort of reach into my mind and think of like when he was like less than caring. I think it was like when he died and came back, he had a little bit of a rough patch, of course, but I think who wouldn't? He had died. He
He had
came
a little
back. It was
PTSD.
weird.
Yeah. And he was super snappy about
Yeah.
more about like, you know, being alive again and what that means, more so
Yeah.
than his care of others. You know, it was more like
it was
I'm
like
freaking out because
survivor's
I'm alive.
guilt kind of thing. And I think that's understandable, but again, it's like when you're on a starship, it is going to be a very rough emotional and mental tax on you. You're going to run into things that are completely unexpected. I'm thinking of like Kira on Move Along Home, and she's like, I signed up to be an administrator. Like, yeah, you know, you have to be kind of prepared for anything. So yeah, that's the only time I think I've ever seen him be less than caring, but I think he gets high marks in all areas otherwise.
So yeah, I guess I'll start at the bottom. Caring, as everyone's basically already established, he might be trying to think back to everybody we spoke about last week, and he might actually be the most caring as far as actually caring about you as a person. Not necessarily just caring about, like some of the doctors we talked about before were, they cared about the disease or they cared about, you know, solving the problem. And even if they're nice to you, he seems like he's actually interested in getting to know you as a person and, you know, helping what makes you tick, which is partially why he became more of a therapist role later on, coupled with his little trill exchange there, which kind of helped even broaden his horizons even a bit more. So he definitely has the caring thing down. One thing that's interesting about the things you've set up here, none of these are specifically medically definite. Like there's nothing on here like, oh, he's best with a hypo spray or anything like that,
Right.
which is
Super good.
definitely, it's definitely important and especially
with
the new Trek issues here or episodes here, because out of all of what we see Culber do, his character arcs, you know, there's very little solving medical issues as far as like the disease of the week, like we had in a lot of the other shows. So a lot of what we get to see him doing here is through the course of a more serialized story, growing with the characters, specifically Culber and his relationship with Stamets, and, you know, of course, the other characters that actually get personalities on the show. They give you a better understanding of who this person is outside of just, he's the sick bay guy, or, you know, he takes care of the medical things in this room. He's more well woven into the overarching storyline. So we get to see him outside of the medical setting being more bluntly honest with people, sometimes in a personal setting. Or, and when I say bluntly honest, he does couch it a lot more in, I don't want to say metaphor, but he has a lot of like words of wisdom, or he's trying to soften the blow with some of the things by relating it to other events, and specifically in some instances, the past of his own culture and upbringing. And the decisions under pressure, again, not necessarily medically based all the time, at least, but he does seem to at least have a pretty good grasp of how to make those decisions, even outside of his grappling with his own life and death there for a while.
Yeah, I feel like Culber is, I feel like, at least for sure in season 5, he's kind of like a walking fortune cookie. Something about him is a little too positive for me. Like he's always smiling and he's like, I just learned the secret of death, but I would like to hear more about your day. I don't know. Something about it is like a little too much for me, but I do think that was an intentional choice for the writers, because he wasn't like that in season 1. And after his near-death experience, or actually after coming back from being dead, he was really spicy and saucy as he figured out like his bearings and what does he care about and who does he want to be. And so his character does undergo quite a bit of changes. By the end, though, he's really smiley and he just seems a little too, I can't say he's too well adjusted because he's actually going through some things in season 5, but he's very kind. I will say that. He's very caring. I agree with you, Josh. I think he's the most caring of everybody on the list, actually, from last week and this week. He's super concerned about the whole being. I'm thinking of the way he was interacting with Book in season 5, how he was like, hey, how are you doing? And he was like, everything's fine. Like, I've got this, all my plans are figured out or whatever. And Culber's like, I wasn't asking about your plans. I was asking about you. Like, how are you doing? And I don't think that's something we often see the medical professionals doing, other than maybe Counselor Troy. And definitely Culber does slot more into the counselor role and a lot less of the doctor role. At the end of this, we're going to ask, the same question we asked last week of which of these doctors would be your primary, which would be your specialist. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on him as your personal doctor when we get to the end of this list. Hello to everybody who's in the chat live. Hello to everybody who's watching on the replay. Let me know your thoughts about Culber. Also, if you're watching on the replay, timestamps are below, so you can jump ahead at any time. And with that said, let's go to the next doctor on
Can
the
I
list.
throw one question for Culber?
Yeah.
Where do you think he's more effective? When you see him early on as the doctor or later as the counselor? Because I think he's a more effective counselor personally.
Yeah. Personally,
Yes.
I would say counselor 1,000%, especially considering everything this crew has been through. They need a counselor more. Like, that's what they need. They've been displaced from space and time. They need a counselor. This is the role they really need.
Also with Book, it's like he lost his entire planet. That's a huge problem to face. And the fact that he reached into his own, like, it's not typical for like a counselor to necessarily like share things about themselves, but it's like, it's a different situation because they all live together on the ship. So it's not cool. There's not such a harsh delineation between friend and patient. So the fact that he reached into his own experience and shared about his Puerto Rican heritage, I thought was like one of the best things on Star Trek, period. Honestly, that was one of my favorite scenes in Discovery overall. But I love that. So yeah, much more effective in my view as a counselor.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you just mentioned something. Yeah. The whole crew coming through from the past together. He definitely was, to a certain extent, the glue that kind of, Michael was the glue as well, but he was the glue that really kept them, kind of ticking and feeling like they hadn't necessarily made a giant mistake by leaving everything behind. Even though you could tell it was also affecting him in some points, he was definitely the one that was able to provide the support and help people move through it. And even, like Book came in, he wasn't part of that group. He's a native from the future, and he was still able to relate with his centuries-old doctor wisdom and all of the things he learned. He was still able to provide, what was needed for that circumstance.
Yeah, and I do also think I totally agree with you, and I also think, I also feel like future technology, the medicine stuff, like the surgeries and whatnot. I feel like the ship could handle it. I feel like the ship could figure that out. But kind of the mental space is really his zone of genius. And yeah, I think Michael is the glue that kept them alive, like kept their bodies physically moving forward because she kept the ship from getting destroyed over and over. But I think Culber kept their spirits alive and their minds alive and kept them engaged in life, which would be extremely hard, either being displaced from everyone you've ever known because you went into the future, or losing everyone you've ever known because your planet was destroyed. Either way, I think this is the role that they absolutely needed on the ship. Thanks for bringing that up, Dustin. Okay, now to the next doctor on the list, and I'm putting doctor with an asterisk. So I don't think Picard doesn't really follow this structure. It sort of has a captain. If we're not counting season 3, which is like TNG, the sequel, like we're not counting that. It doesn't really follow this structure that we've been doing for the last several weeks of chief engineer and first officer and yada, yada. So it also doesn't really have a doctor. Jurati is a cyberneticist. So she's like an expert in androids, but also she does medical stuff all the time. Like she's always scanning and hypospraying. So Plus, I just don't care for this character. So this was my opportunity to share that dislike because it doesn't really fit in any of the other shows that I've done so far on the Savage Stream. Anyways, enough from me. So I want to hear from all of you your thoughts of Jurati on these 3 different areas. Is she decisive under pressure? Gosh, now that I say make quick life or death decisions, I want to say make good life or death decisions. Too late for that.
Thanks for clarity.
I know. Now I'm looking at them like, oh, she does make quick. Are they the best? Well, okay. And then blunt honesty. Does she always tell the truth? And then caring. Does she care for her crew's well-being? And crew can be kind of loose because, like I said, Picard's not quite the same container as the other shows. So, Josh, do you want to start this one off?
Not really, but I will.
Josh,
all right. Dr. Jurati. So I guess I'll start at the bottom again. Caring. Again, I guess this changes over the course of the show between season 1 and season 2, and then she's a Borg and all that stuff. But I think we're supposed to believe that she's trying to care for like the well-being of organic life in general. But aside from, caring for herself and caring for Rios, who she kind of wanted to hook up with, I don't know if I really feel like she cared about anyone to any real extent that matters. Blunt, yes. Honesty, no. At least not a lot of the time. She could be honest about things that pertain to, I guess, like her cybernetics field, if she was trying to be bluntly honest about, how she thought something like that worked. But if she was actually trying to be honest about her real motives or what was going on, I'm specifically thinking of the whole murder subplot and I guess she was brainwashed, maybe, I don't know. But then later on, she gets taken over by a Borg too, so she's not really in her. So she's never really just a normal, uncontrolled being in the entirety of the show. So I guess it's no for the honesty, unless it's like self-serving honesty or propping herself up. Yeah, like honest to the point where she says, "Well, this thing is true because I know it." But if it's something that's going to help other people and not help her, no. And decisive under pressure. I feel like she's such a neurotic mess with making decisions anyways that she can make a decision and stick with it, but she's going to have a traumatic time getting to that point, especially if it's murdering someone she supposedly loves. So I'm not feeling too high on any of these categories, I suppose.
Vanessa, before you go, I missed this one in the comments from DJ Magix about Culber. He's a good doctor and a better counselor as long as you split him and Stamets up. That duo is just a ball of annoyance. Separately, I can deal with them together. It feels forced and unnecessarily overdramatic. Well, Discovery's kind of about being dramatic. So I don't know if they do. I don't know if they consider anything overly dramatic. I think they consider it baseline dramatic.
Like,
but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, the thing about like Discovery is like, outside of Michael, a lot of the characters, if you set them by themselves, don't have a lot of substance to them. And sadly, like I love Culber and Stamets. I think that representation is so important, but that's absolutely correct. Like separately, it's like, who are they exactly? Like one of the things I liked about that counseling scene was like, we got a little bit of backstory, anyhow.
I like that they broke up after he came back, because I felt like, wow, there's a character experiencing trauma in like a legitimate way, as opposed to just being like, oh, I just came back to life. Okay, back to work. Doop, doop, doo, doo, doo. Like, which is usually do, right? He's like freaking out and like, I don't even know. Do I want this? I like that. And then I like that they worked through it and then came back together. Like, I just appreciated that whole storyline. It felt really
Yes. And like, I wish that they were focused on a little bit more. But again, like Discovery's not really an ensemble cast. It's like one main character and their friends. So like with Jurati, I think it's worth noting that like she's not in Starfleet. And so when she's on a ship, she's just in a very reactive mode. Like, oh my God, just everything is just very under pressure. So decisive, absolutely not. I think she sort of lets other people, she outsources that decision making to other people and sort of like goes with it. Like, I will do as you ask me, but please don't make me make a decision on my own that I will have to be held accountable for later. No, thank you. And that's sort of like what made her infusion with the Borg so fascinating, is like this person that's like this neurotic mess, as Josh said, is like becoming sort of like girl boss, you know, like really up, like getting an upgrade, glow up, whatever, except in the Borg. So I thought that's why I was like, I think I believe somebody commented earlier about like, it's really a shame we didn't get to see that Borg play into like the Federation. Like, how do the Borg, you know, assist the Federation going forward? Do they become part of the Federation, or at least this faction of the Borg? Anyway, before I go off on a tangent, blunt honesty, no. No, I like honesty, not really. No. Like I see her as a competent doctor in her field, but with this rubric, no, it's just D minuses all around. Caring, I think she wants to be, but she's way too insecure for that. I think she's just so self-doubting when she's in the field that it's like, it's like she just can't access that exactly. So yeah, not getting high marks in any of these. Like Josh said, I agree.
Yeah, I think you guys already said a lot of this. Let's start with caring. Because even if you start to think like, oh, well, she got shown a vision of the universe being destroyed, and this is her version of caring. She's doing the things she needs to do to preserve humanity and the galaxy and all that. But even before that happens to her, her first words to Picard are, well, maybe not first words, but in the first scene with Picard, she's like, boy, I wish you'd come on my day off. So, no, I don't think she really cares about much of anything, and not even just in the, like, professional doctor kind of capacity. As you guys have said, you have to split up the words blunt and honesty when it comes to Jurati, because she's a 5 out of 5 in blunt. Honesty, I guess she's, yeah, no. I was gonna try and play devil's advocate for a second and be like, oh, well, she was honest to a point because she had her mission to accomplish and save the galaxy. But, you know, even in season 2, she hides things. So yeah, she is not getting high marks there at all. Decisive under pressure. Well, I mean, she grabbed a shotgun and took care of the Borg Queen when it became necessary. That's about it. I got nothing. Decisive under pressure, not so much. For everybody that's like, I didn't like this, I do like Jurati. I think Jurati, not as a doctor, she's, no, terrible. As a character, I actually like her, and I even like her being a neurotic mess. I think she's rather wonderful, and I like her arc becoming a new Borg Queen. I think that's really kind of perfect for her. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Jurati.
I don't like her, but I do like that she's an interesting character. So I will agree with you there. Because like the other option is she could just be like vanilla. She could be boring. She could be like a set piece. But I think she definitely was a character with, you know, some kind of arc and, you know, thoughts and opinions and definitely tons of insecurities. So they did flesh her out as a character. I just don't particularly care for the character. PS2 Chipper says, Dr. Jurati, glad they wrote her off in season 3. She had potential, but that was wasted. I think that's what Vanessa was mentioning.
Yeah. So maybe I misunderstood that comment, but like, I was all about the Borgati.
AF Kaplan says her insecurity ends up undercutting her credibility on a professional level. Yeah, I would say I totally agree. Now, to Josh's point, all of these lists are always totally unfair because they're just based on 3 things and whatever things come to our mind. So it's not going to be like a perfect judgment. Also, she's not even like the doctor of the show or whatever, so she doesn't even really fit in this conversation. However, she's the closest we can get in Picard, so let's just throw her in.
Well, you can always bring up Dr. Oak. I know you said like excluding season 3, but then you've got Dr. Oak from season 3, who's a traditional Starfleet doctor, and we don't get a lot about it from Jurati, but one of the throwaway lines from season 1 is that she got recruited out of Starfleet, so she was in Starfleet at some point.
And I mean, she worked for the Daystrom Institute, right? I thought that was like a Starfleet subsidiary or something like that.
Well, it's a Federation organization, but you know, it's like saying you're part of ICE, but there's this, you know, institute that's funded by the federal government. The two things are not the same.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And that's kind of like the flavor of Picard. It's a bunch of, like I've said before, it's the whole island of misfit toys. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. I think she is decisive under pressure. I just don't think she makes good decisions, but I think she makes them. She makes decisions. Absolutely. She'll decide something and she'll be like, board queen. Sure. Why not? I mean, she's like, okay, sounds good. I don't think she's honest at all. That's a big part of her character is to be kind of tricksy. And I don't think she cares. Like, I don't think she cares about anything. And I don't know if that's because she, like to Vanessa's point, she doesn't have access to caring. Like she just doesn't have practice with empathy, which could be, and it could be why she's a cyberneticist. It could be like, I don't get people, so I'm just going to work with robots. Like I get that. That could be her thing. It also could be that she's just deeply introverted and very lonely and doesn't have enough experience with other people to know how to care. Because when the board queen is like, I know what's wrong with you. You don't have friends. I'll be your forever friend. Jurati's like, in. A forever friend who can force all these other people to be my friends. Like, that's it.
Sold.
Like, sign me up. So I do feel like she does not care. On this particular scale, she's failing. But had we picked a different scale, she could have totally done amazing. Like, if we could pick the captain's qualities, it might have been great. So that just sort of worked out that way. DJ Magic says, I question her credentials. I think the recruiting out of Starfleet is a sham. She probably has been grifting her way to get where she is. I think she really does know things about cybernetics, though.
Yeah, she was never in Starfleet. She's not a Starfleet doctor, so.
Yeah, I wish flushed her out being the new Borg queen. And maybe that was the plan. Maybe that was originally the plan. Maybe that was where season 3 was going to go. And then things changed. I don't know.
Well, from what I understand, season 2 and 3 were they were come up with separately at the same time. Because they announced the TNG cast was returning in the middle of season 2. So it's like they were just throwing all the cards on the table at that point.
Oh, so it wasn't the plan.
It might have been the writer of season 2's plan originally, but the show kind of ran out of time.
Yeah. The plans for Picard change from season to season. I mean, supposedly when season 1 started, there was a complete plan, and then when Akiva Goldsman dropped out and Terry Metalis picked it up, it became a new plan, and then even a third plan halfway through the execution of the second plan.
And that's what it feels like. And I think it was a similar with Discovery, right? And that's why it feels choppy, because the plan was very unclear. So yes. It sounds like somebody's plan, DJ Magix, was at some point to flesh out this Borg queen. That might have been interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I really want more Borg storylines like ever in my life. I do think the Borg are interesting, but I feel like we've tapped that well.
I just wanted like the new faction of the Borg, like not the, you know, lower your shields, prepare to be assimilated folks, but the ones that were on the side of the Federation and like what like joining the Federation would look like, you know, similar to like how Lower Decks wants to have the Ferengi join the Federation. Like it would make it expand the world and make it more interesting. Are there going to be Borg officers, you know, like not just ex-Borg? That would be interesting to me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The new, kinder, nicer Borg. Yes, that was their sales pitch. We just want to be Borg. A.F. Kaplan says, acceptance after a lifetime of being socially awkward can be a powerful lure. 100%. It's like joining a gang, but she joined the queen of the gang. Like, I'm not saying her reasons for joining didn't make sense. They made perfect sense for this character. That's what I'm saying, is that I don't feel like she cared at all. And I don't know why. But if that came from her being really isolated, it makes sense that she would join the Borg Queen, because it's like ready-made friends. Okay, so go ahead.
I think some of it is just the story of season 1 where all the characters ended up broken because of Commodore O. And same thing for her. Her whole life's work got sidelined out of her control. And I think that's probably a big part of what, like, put her in the funk that she's in. Like, well, why should I care? They took away my life's work.
Yeah, she put her entire being into that work instead of relationships with people. And now she has none of them.
It is kind of like a stereotype of somebody who's like deep into STEM, where it's like, oh, they're disciplined to the detriment of every relationship in their life. You know, it's completely imbalanced, and anybody passionate may throw themselves into it to their personal detriment. So, but like, scientists get colored this way a lot.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I got this a lot in college, where people were like, "You're a science major, but you seem so normal." And I was like, "Thank you."
But you have emotions.
Yeah, but you have friends. Like, yeah, I do. Weird. Yeah, but you're right. It is a bit of a stereotype. I think she plays it well. I think she does socially awkward very well. Like, this actress, she sells that. She sells the heck out of this character. Just on this rubric, she just doesn't pass. That's the only thing.
I had never thought about it that way. So she's kind of the show's Spock or Data.
If Spock or Data were super murderous, yes. Yes. This is her. She's that. But they're all kind of that, because Spock and Data were like outsiders looking in. They're all kind of that. Outsiders looking in one way or another, with the exception of Picard, who's just along for the ride. He's just sitting in the ship like, all right, guys, I'll be here when you get back from the away mission, because I'm like 1,000 years old, so I'm just going to stay right here. Okay, that brings us to the next doctor on the list, which is Dr. M'Benga. Which, by the way, we talked last week off camera, like after our last live stream. Dustin and Josh and I were talking, and you guys were saying how Nurse Chapel does more doctoring than M'Benga does, which I totally agree. So Nurse Chapel is the next doctor on the list, because I do think she does more doctoring. And I was very adamant, like, this is only doctors. But after watching All of Strange New Worlds, I was like, yeah, she's the only one with the hypo spray the whole time. So we got to include her. But anyways, where do you guys think Dr. M'Benga falls on this list of decisive under pressure, blunt honesty, and caring? And let's start with Vanessa.
The thing that sticks out to me the most out of these three criteria are definitely the blunt honesty thing, because man, oh man, does he lie. He's a liar. Liar.
47 times.
Liar. Like,
but doesn't lie about people's medical treatment.
Oh man. I love the fact that he like covers up that he's holding onto a pattern buffer. I think it's a really beautiful story, but you know, it is a lie, and it's a big lie. It's not like, oh darn, dropped a hypo spray or left a piece of like metal inside of somebody and sutured it up or something. No, he's just fully lying about like keeping somebody in a pattern buffer. That was wild. But I loved it. I loved, you know, it's going to sound a little odd, but when the kid died, that was a beautiful scene. But you know, not such high marks. Is he honest with his patients? I think it kind of depends on, I think it's like kind of case dependent, you know. But I think decisive under pressure is the thing that he does the best. He seems battle tested, where he's ready to sort of act and do so in the best interest of the patients. Caring deeply. He's not as like emotionally present, I guess, as Culber. Certainly more than Jurati, but I think it shows through his work. But obviously keeping somebody in a pattern buffer until they find a cure for an incurable thing demonstrates a profound amount of caring. That, you know, he risked his job for caring. So I think, you know, he's a complicated guy, and I enjoy that about him.
And you could argue he did that because that was his daughter. and maybe he wouldn't have done that for someone else. But there's that episode in season 2 when you see him meet Nurse Chapel and they're like field medics or whatever, and that guy has like all of his guts all out, and he's like, keep him in the pattern buffer because they don't have an organ regenerator, but when the ship comes, they'll have one. So he's like, let's put him in the pattern buffer. Exactly. I do that for all the bad cases. I store them all in there until we get to a ship. So it wasn't like, even if his daughter was maybe the inspiration for that,
right?
He wasn't only doing it just for his daughter.
Right. Exactly. So I think he, he's very like, I'm going to get the job done no matter what kind of person. And that's the kind of person I would want as a doctor. Like, I'm going to hit myself against this problem until a solution falls out kind of thing.
AF Kaplan says, in TOS, this character was said to have an extensive training and experience treating Vulcans. I did not notice this aspect of his training being emphasized in Strange New Worlds. Well, season 3 is coming out at the time of this recording in just a couple of weeks. So maybe that's a season 3 thing they'll explore. But I know Pike's whole situation is supposed to be like a 10-year experience. So let's see how long Strange New Worlds lasts. And maybe they'll include more Vulcan-y stuff with M'Benga. Dustin.
Yeah, so speaking of TOS, let's take Decisive Under Pressure back to his days in TOS, where one of the first things we see is him coming into a room and just smacking the hell out of Spock, because that's what he's supposed to do, because he knows the Vulcan stuff. So Decisive Under Pressure. So from that one and the episode of Strange New Worlds, where we get to see his backstory as the God, what was his moniker as a killer?
The butcher of something,
whatever the planet was. Yes, and we see him like he had stored that a person's pattern in the buffer. And then, like, Chapel couldn't make the decision of, but I can't clear this buffer, but if we don't, then, like, a whole other group of people are going to die. And he's just like, nope, just press that button. He is very decisive under pressure. I'll give him, like, a 4.5 out of 5 on that one. Blunt honesty, yeah, Vanessa, I think, pretty much sold that one. No, he's probably one of the least honest doctors that we've seen. Probably fine as far as like the medical stuff, but we haven't seen enough of him utilizing blunt honesty in a medical situation to know the answer to that one. And caring, yeah, he's very deeply caring. Even if that caring means needing to terminate somebody to save more people. So yeah,
including his daughter. Right, because he said that when his daughter was found out or whatever, when he admitted that to Una, he was like, it'll never happen again. Just let me bring her back so I can say goodbye. He was already like, I can never put the crew at risk again for one life.
Yep.
Crazy. That was a good storyline. PS2 Chipper says, so far I only know of Dr. Jurati. Yes. So I, like you, had watched all of Picard before watching all of Strange New Worlds, and that's just not the way to do it, buddy. It's not the way to do it. Go ahead and watch Strange New Worlds. It's awesome. It's so good. It's my favorite new Trek, like hands down. So give that one a watch. It's going to make you feel good. You're not going to be like, wow, this is such a bummer. And every single episode is such a bummer. And like, I feel so sucky at the end. Like it's a good, enjoyable experience.
There's a couple bummer episodes, but then the very next one is like an upbeat sing-along. So
literally.
Yes.
All right, Josh, thoughts?
So I guess if you take him and boil him down, more so than probably any of the other doctors we've talked about, he has, and there's been allusions to this in the show. We saw a little of it, but he's more than just a doctor. He was some sort of a super soldier combat guy. He was also a combat medic in war zones. So he's coming into this with a much more, I guess, a different view of things, the much more greater good type of view, or he's much more used to making the decisions of, the needs of the many, I guess you could say, sort of an idea there where, yes, we see that he can make a choice if it might mean the detriment of one person over, the greater good of the entire crew. But he also has his own personal things, as we talked about with his daughter or somebody that's close to him. He's also going to instinctively, or maybe not instinctively, maybe decisively decide that that person is, going to get more of his expertise in treatment because that person is special to him. So he kind of has a good mix of both of those things, which makes for good storytelling. Maybe not necessarily the best doctor when it comes to the blunt honesty thing here. He can be bluntly honest. Like if there's a medical situation that arises and he needs to tell you, you're going to lose your leg or something like that. I feel like he would be very good at that. But keeping secrets is definitely something that he is equally good at, and probably because he had to. He was a super secret undercover super soldier, in the war. There's probably things he was trained to do that don't necessarily add up to being a good, feel-good, friendly, down-home doctor. Caring, I do believe that he cares for the crew, but like we've said, if caring for one person that's not necessarily close to him is going to put everybody else at risk, he can go to that decisive under pressure decision mode and choose what's the best option here, where we saw the doctor from Voyager can't necessarily do that without degrading and blowing up and all that stuff. So I think this makes him a much more interesting, complex type of doctor, but it's not necessarily the one you would always want, depending on how dire your situation is compared to everybody else's.
Yeah, let me just jump kind of towards the end and say I do not want him as my primary care doctor. No. He's the last one. I will take Jurati over Mbenga on that PCP list.
Because I see him as how different doctors have different disciplines that sort of suit their temperament.
Yes.
And I think he's more of a surgeon. He's more comfortable with the blood, guts, and bones and all that stuff. I think he's more that than somebody that's open your mouth and let's, get the tongue depressor out kind of person and testing your reflexes. Yeah, that I agree. Not the most best bedside manner, but gets the job done in pressury situations.
I agree with you guys that we don't see much doctoring done from him. So these categories are really more on his him as a person. The only scene I can remember is the one where Uhura is hallucinating. That's the only scene I can remember where he says someone's diagnosis in front of them and delivers it. But that's not enough information to go on, to really be oh, he's always bluntly honest or whatever. I think that he absolutely is I agree with DJ Magix. He's a 10 out of 10 with decisive under pressure for sure, because of all his background experience as a field medic and all of that, super soldier, whatever. I also think that's where the caring comes in. I don't think he's the most caring person. I think he cares. I think he has a big picture caring. He cares about the overall mission and he cares about the overall ship. And he will care about the individual to the extent that it does not endanger the rest of the ship. So I think that they kind of are combined in his case, the decisive under pressure and his caring. It's he's not gonna put everybody at risk. He did put everybody at risk for his daughter accidentally, and then when he realized that happened, he was that can't happen again. I need to just let her go because I cannot put a bunch of people at risk. And I think that comes from his background in wartime of just knowing when to call it, when to save it. Really being amazing at triage. But I also think that sacrificed his warm and cuddly side because you can't have it both ways. You need that professional distance to make those difficult decisions. I feel he's the opposite of Culber, who's just hey, you want to have some tea? He's just so cuddly. And I feel with Vega's not I would never use the word cuddly. Even when he's with his daughter, he's sitting 5 feet away from her. He's not cuddled up with her reading a book. He's at a distance, reading carefully. You know what I mean? So blunt honesty. Yeah, I agree with you. If we separate blunt and honest, he's super blunt and not super honest. And we could say, like Josh said, it's because of his training. But also, which it could be. It could also just be part of his personality. He tells you what he thinks you need to know. That's it. I'm thinking of the episode, the same episode where we see his backstory, where he gets in that fight with the Klingon. And then Nurse Chapel's just I saw the whole thing. Klingon started it. Mbenga finished it. And he's just yep, that's exactly what happened. And you're Is that what happened?
Even lying to Pike, who we know had they've been friends for years.
For like 20 years.
And he just lies right to his face.
Pike would
I
have
think it
defended
was
him.
I think it was one of those things where it's like, I'm going to give you a version of the story that doesn't align with reality, and you're just going to accept it, and we're just going to move on. That's what that is. No investigation. You're just going to take my word and keep it pushing.
Well, I think that's part of his big picture thing too, because it's best for the crew to keep Pike in command and not have to deal with this situation. So he's just like, let's do what I need to do to keep things running as usual right here, so that people don't get bogged down in any of this.
I haven't
And
thought
also,
about
part
this.
of his decisive under pressure. He had no problem stabbing that guy when they were fighting over the knife that he pulled out. By the way, he was like, I had the proof. Like, we didn't need to pull out a knife right now, but he pulled that out. And he was
He
decisive
took a look
under
at this
that
proof.
Exactly.
I
Look at
wonder
this
if
proof.
it's
Look
some of
closer.
He just
the,
tripped and
lying
fell on it.
and blunt
Very
honesty
clumsy
part
man.
that's going to end up with him still on the ship, but no longer chief medical officer. To Josh, who's the dude from the cage? I know you know the answer.
Piper? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Or no,
Sure.
Piper was in the second pilot. Boyce was in the cage.
Yes, Boyce. Yeah, him. Because he's going to be, and then technically, do we actually ever know that Bones is the CMO? Because he always identifies himself as the ship's surgeon and never the chief medical
That's a
officer.
good
So
point.
I don't know, but we know M'Benga is going to be supplanted by Boyce at least at some time in the not too distant. Or no, never mind, because Boyce was before this.
Oh, you're right.
There's,
The cage
there's
was
so
prior.
many doctors. There's so many doctors. Never mind. Sorry.
I feel like there's always going to be a need for him somewhere. So, I mean, it's kind of like we talked about with Cisco, like wartime Cisco and peacetime Cisco. It's like M'Benga's wartime doctor. He would be amazing on Discovery when they're like going through all their major battles and stuff. Maybe not in general though, because it's a pretty cuddly crew. But I think he would be like a Rainer in that situation. But just as far as like the situation, he's the one you want to have when you are the Enterprise going into all these unknown places. Like, because he's going to make hard decisions. He's not afraid of a fight. I would want this guy on my away team. Like, you know, a lot of people are like, why are they on the away team? Like, why are they even leaving the ship? This guy, he needs to be on every away mission because he can handle himself and hypospray anybody who gets hurt. Like, it's just, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife in that sense. DJ Magix is a big fan, 10 out of 10. He lies when it's needed and it's justified. He's the military doctor who walks in the ER and is just like, screw your protocols. That's how you save a life. He is very much about screw the protocols. And I feel like so is Pike, etc. Like the whole crew is pretty much like protocol, schmotocol, which is, I guess, where Kirk gets it from. And then DJ Maddox says, M'Benga lets Chapel do the majority as he's a teacher and she needs rotation hours. Oh, that's how we're going to, okay. That's how we're going to explain why she's always doing the work. She needs rotation hours. It's her internship. A.F. Kaplan says the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. War the one. Perhaps a hint or foreshadowing of his Vulcan training. Maybe. TOS was a small ship. Yeah, one thing about the new Trek, like especially Strange New Worlds and Discovery, is not so much about the ships, but the sets. Huge. Like the sets are enormous. My entire house could fit on the bridge of the Discovery. Like, what the heck? It's unreal. I don't know why. I guess budget things. I'm not really sure. He's caring, in my opinion, he's very caring, but in a matter that a lot of people don't get. A very military doctor style, one that I wish more doctors would use today versus the warm and fuzzies that a lot of doctors feel everyone needs. So to that, I would say I disagree. I do not want a doctor who's cold and doesn't really care about me personally. Like that, for me, that's really important that I feel like a doctor cares. They don't have to be my best friend. We don't have to go out for tea. They do not have to be Culber, but I do want to feel like they care about my health and well-being personally, not like I'm one of the many. And if the needs outweigh, like I'll be cut loose. Like I don't want to feel that way. And I have had doctors where I feel like I'm just like one of the many people they're seeing today. And it's like, oh, you're not life or death. Next. You know what I mean?
Like you're one cough away from being shot out of an airlock or something. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean,
some modicum of like, okay, we're gonna try to get you well no matter how mild the thing is.
Yes, like my current medical care providers are exactly like that. Like if I come in, I like fainted last year. I fainted for no reason, just like sitting still, and I just passed out. And so I was like, that's weird. And I went to the doctors, and by the time I went, everything was fine. But they did every kind of test you could imagine. You think they'd be like, previous doctors would be like, well, you're fine now, so why did you come in? You know what I mean? They would just be like, you're fine, get out of here. That's what a military person would do. We don't have time for this. There's bombs and stuff. Like, let's go. But not being in wartime at the moment, you know, my doctors were like, okay, let's do this test. Let's do that test. Let's put a heart monitor on you. Stand up, sit down. Let's take you know what I mean? They like went the effort. And then at the end, I was fine and there was nothing wrong. But wasn't it nicer for me to know that for sure than to be like, yeah, if you pass out a couple more times, then come in, which is, I feel like, big of a deal. Well, if this happens 3, 4, 5, 6 more times, then come and see me, and then we'll like run a test. So
if you get to double digits,
yeah, that's just.
Are you dead yet? If not, don't.
GG Magic says, I'm a bottom line dude. People got stuff to do. Yeah, but this is their job though. This is their thing to do.
There's a different approach to, you know, medical triage in a war zone versus, you know, a ship's doctor that is dealing with, you know, mild maladies. I believe even the EMH brings this up because like when he first gets turned on, he's like, you know, I was, you know, meant to be turned on in an emergency and like doing like really big procedures, major surgery and stuff. And I'm here for like acne and bump knees. And I'm sure he feels the same way, but it's like, you have to sort of like adapt because that's your job.
Yeah. And I could see that being really, really hard. Bye, AF Kaplan. So GJ Magic says that's not the military style I was referring to. So like clarify for sure. Let me know. But if you're talking about more like the blunt, straightforward, I'm okay with blunt and straightforward. And I do want my doctor to like, I do want to feel like they care about me getting better. And they don't have to be warm and cuddly and we don't have to snuggle at the end of our sessions. But I do want to feel like they do care about what I'm going through. With that said, let's go to the next medical professional on the list, who I feel like does way more doctoring on the Enterprise than Mbanga, and that's Nurse Chapel. So thoughts where she sits on the list of decisive under pressure, blunt honesty, and caring. And I forget who's next. I think maybe Dustin?
Well, I don't think she's very decisive under pressure. I mean, I think she's fine. But it definitely goes back to that moment where we're talking about with Mbanga again, where she could not let that one person in the transporter buffer go to save an entire team of people. She was not decisive in that moment. And I don't think we've seen a lot of other times for her to have the opportunity. So she's going to get like a 1.5 or 2 out of 5. Blunt honesty, also not quite as secretive as Mbanga, but she keeps his secrets. And she's got her own thing going on. It's not great. Probably like 2.5 out of 5. Better than Mbanga, but not by much. Caring. Yeah, it's like right down the middle. She seems fine. She seems competent. She seems like she does actually care about people, especially if their name is Spock.
She definitely cares about person, at least.
She's just fine as a medical professional, I guess. Good nurse, competent, great. Miss Majel Barrett Roddenberry.
Which I was today years old when I found out that Majel Barrett played both Una and Nurse Chapel. Because I was like, didn't she play Una? And I looked it up. I was like, yeah, wait, didn't she play Nurse Chapel? And I was like, yeah, wait, what? How many people did she play in TOS? I just
and the computer.
I knew she was a computer.
It's like a whole thing because it was like this nepotism thing because she had already had an affair with Roddenberry and the studio knew about it. And so her as Una, they kicked her out after the pilot. But then she reapplied and put like on different wig and makeup so they wouldn't recognize her. And she actually got by without noticing that, and then got put into the minor role of Chapel and the computer.
That's an amazing life. And now she's the ship's the voice of the ship forevermore. GJ Magic says, and this is back to Dr. Mbanga, he's straightforward. He'll tell you, okay, you scraped your knee. It's not serious. But if we don't clean it and disinfect it, it could cause more serious issues and proceed to do so. And others would be like, oh, you have a boo-boo? How did we scrape our little knee? Let's go ahead and kiss it and make it better, blah, blah, blah. Which doctor exactly do you think?
Yeah. Like
reaction?
even the most huggy doctor like Phlox or, you know, Crusher wouldn't see something like that. Exactly.
Maybe Pulaski. Maybe.
Yeah, definitely Pulaski. If it was
Can you
Worf
see
Snake.
Pulaski just being like,
Really?
"Oh,
She's so gruff.
No, that was I was being sarcastic.
who is Dr. Chapel? It's Nurse Chapel. She's not a doctor. It's from TOS, but also from Strange New Worlds. And the only reason I put her on this list is because she does more doctoring than the doctor. Like, she's always in the lab. She's always got a hypo spray. She's always running around with like a med kit. Okay, Josh, go ahead. Your thoughts on
and just before Josh goes, she becomes doctor by the motion picture.
Yes. And I think she also becomes a doctor in the Kelvinverse by the third film. It's like mentioned off screen or something. So
okay,
she will get there one day. So I think it's kind of an interesting case for her. So I do like her as a character in the show. She's kind of like a mini-me version of some of the same things that we were dealing with Mbenga as far as the wartime stuff and keeping the secrets. But she's more of a I feel like she has more of the caring that's outwardly towards specific individuals and less of the overall big picture caring that we were saying Mbenga had. But I also feel like the opposite side of that coin is she is more, and I don't necessarily mean this as a negative to her character because I like watching her, but she feels more self-serving in the show. She feels more like she's willing to act upon things that she deems better for herself, the people she cares about, what she thinks is the best thing, not necessarily the best thing overall. And actually just rewatching the first episode of Strange New Worlds, it's almost like they had a handoff of Mbenga. He's like, oh, I'm the doctor, but she's on board. She's an epigeneticist. I'll let her handle this. And then from then on, it's like she's just still handling everything and he's in the background. So she does have a lot more of the actual medical things on the show. She's the one that's doing the changing people into other species for their covert missions or meddling with their genome so that they can blend in with sensors and then just magically changing them back a couple of hours later. So if we're actually going to look at the medical stuff, which we haven't done for a lot of these people, she seems pretty competent and like she knows what she's doing for that. Again, with a blunt honesty, more self-servingly because she can be bluntly honest and she does say things that are bluntly honest at times, but it's more so to get her way and less so just out of the, just what's coming out of her mouth without thinking about it. And decisive under pressure, she can, but I also feel like there's a lot of occasions where she's caught between decisions and she can't make the one that, or she might know the one she should make, but her heart's not leading her to that one.
Yeah, that was well said. I agree 1,000% with everything you just said. I feel like I also agree with Dustin, whereas decisive under pressure. Like Vanessa, I didn't skip you, did I?
I was gonna wait.
Oh no, please,
Josh.
Okay, please continue.
So what I find interesting about the Mbenga and Chapel relationship is that this is more true to like how actual hospitals work, where the nurses do all the work. And the thing about like her is that she isn't, to me, like the way that she treats the medical field is more of like a stepping stone to sort of deeper research, sort of similar to Bashir, where it's like, yeah, I will, fulfill the role of a doctor, but like really my sights are set elsewhere. But she has better bedside manner. So caring, I think she gets does pretty well with that. She, as DJ Magic said, she's a little more open and funny. she has a sense of humor. I don't think Mbenga is, you know, he has a sense of humor, but it only comes out very selective moments and with people that he like is more closely associated with.
You never call him funny.
Chapel, she's just sort of has a more bright personality, I think. Blunt honesty, again, as other people have said, she's willing to sort of keep secrets for others. And I think that may sort of call back to, you know, being in a military situation where it's like you're trauma bonded with somebody and sort of make a contract with them subconsciously that you're going to protect them at all costs kind of thing, because you help keep each other alive and keep each other's morale up and everything. So I can sort of understand where that comes from. Decisive under pressure, I think it's 50-50. But I kind of wish, you know, and it's sort of like, since we're sort of like talking about Discovery and onward, I wish there was sort of like a woman doctor that was some sort of like somebody that would like step up like a Crusher or something like that, or as Pulaski or something, where it's like, you know, they're the point person. I don't really see her as that though. Without Mbenga, I think they both work together. But so yeah, okay, you know, like best, like in terms of like strictly medical bedside manner, great, and I do enjoy her character a lot too.
Yeah, I like they wrote this character to be very likable, right? The way she's kind of like she's kind of flirtatious and funny, and you know, and she's always surrounded by friends in the mess hall. They wrote her to be a likable person, and part of me is like, I like this likable character, and part of me is like, I don't like this likable character. But I think that's more of a me thing than her thing. that's just like a Sharice's issues with people, I guess, because something about that is just like, I don't know, it makes me wary of trusting her.
Specifically around her relationship with Spock is the thing that sort of like makes me think twice about whether she's like completely a trustworthy person. But it's also like she's young and kind of a dummy and like, you know, still figuring stuff out. So, you know, I'll give her a pass on that. But it does kind of like, doesn't really make her look the best.
And that's it. Like, I don't think it's just the thing keeping Mbenga's secret, which I feel like was the right call. And yes, they were trauma bonded. They were in the military together. Yeah, of course you're going to keep each other. You literally kept each other alive. Of course you're going to keep each other's secrets. Like, to not do so would feel like a betrayal to their own selves, I'm sure, let alone to the other person. But she was even secretive about the Spock stuff. Like, I don't think we should tell anybody because I don't want them in our business. And, you know, we have this special thing. And then like an episode later, she's just like, well, I got a new fellowship, so on my way. You know, it's like, I agree with you that she's moving on to bigger, better things. She's got like a vision for her life. Nothing wrong with that. I do think she's not as decisive under pressure as some of the other doctors, especially Mbenga. But I also think that it's what you said, Vanessa. It's because she's younger, she's less experienced. That is exactly why she's here. She's growing in those skills. So yeah, she's not as decisive under pressure as maybe she will be. Even with her field medic training, she's still kind of like, I don't know what to do sometimes. And I think that will change with time. She just needs a little more experience. That's all. Bluntly honest, she doesn't seem super trustworthy 100% of the time, but I think in medical situations, she absolutely would be. Caring, I think she very much cares for Spock, but then will hurt his feelings when she needs to. I think she cares. I think she cares in a general way. Like, she cares about well-being. But I also agree that this whole job feels like a stepping stone to what she really, it's kind of like, so I was in the education system for a long time. It's kind of like people who become teachers because they want to become principals. And it's like, you have to be a teacher for a certain amount of time to be a principal. It's kind of like that. It's like, okay, I'm putting in my 3 years. Like, this is what I have to do. I have to be in this classroom. I have to be with these kids for 3 years so I can move into what I really want to do, which is administration, where I don't have to see a child, you know, or like where I want to be in this position that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing now. And there's no shade on her.
Like, you want to do the thing well enough to look good on your resume to get the promotion versus like, you know, this is where my wheelhouse is and this is where I'm going to stick. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. And that's fine. Like, if she knows that that's where she wants to go, then go for it and be on the Enterprise and learn as much as you can and definitely care for people as well as you can, which is what she's doing. Like, it's very clear. She's always trying to do her very best. So there's no shade on her for that. It's just as far as like a caring doctor, I think she cares. I think she cares okay. It's like it's not like her passion in life or anything. And I don't think she's going to lose sleep if she loses a patient. But I also don't think she's going to be really heartless and just airlock people left and right. Like, I agree. Let's see. DJ Magic says Chapel is my second pick because she's as good as Mbenga, but a little more open and funnier. Okay, we already kind of heard that. Chapel is Mbenga's Batman and Robin. I could see that. And then PS2 Chipper says most teachers can't make it 3 years. Not after COVID, because let me tell you, something weird happened in the water with the students. Like it became a whole different situation. But yeah, so Chapel's like, maybe if we fast forwarded in her career a while later, it might be a different story, I think. Okay, and that brings us to the last doctor on the list, which is Dr. T'Ana. So where does T'Ana land under decisive under pressure, blunt honesty, and caring? I don't know who we're starting with. Maybe Josh or Vanessa? I don't know where we started with.
Maybe.
Vanessa? Okay, Vanessa, do you want to start?
Sure. So like caring, like if this person can get something below an F, I mean, she outright said like that she would not, she does not like doing things to mitigate pain in her patients, which is like so unethical. Like this could only happen in a cartoon. Like
everything T'Ana does.
Yeah.
So unethical.
Yeah. It's just so out of pocket. Like absolutely not. I mean, decisive under pressure. I mean, if the pressure is her anger and the decision is to attack people, yes. In terms of medical stuff, I guess she does the thing, but again, it's like she's deciding not to give you any pain medication too. So, blunt honesty, I guess with the Orion, dang it, I forget her name. What?
Tendi?
Tendi, yes. Honest with Tendi to a certain degree. I think she is invested in Tendi's career going forwards. And wants to, like, Tendi would be a much better doctor than T'Ana. But like
anyone would be a better doctor than T'Ana. Phillips would be a better doctor than T'Ana.
Yeah, like Ta'Ana's blunt honesty. I mean, there's not a lot that she will sort of volunteer. It's sort of like you find things out, like the holodeck stuff with Shax. Against our will, we found out about that. Yeah, like the worst doctor by any metric besides these three, for sure.
The worst doctor by any metric besides these three. That is pretty definitive. Josh, your thoughts?
So I will say, medically speaking, taking everything out of the equation, like, can she administer medicine and do miraculous things, whether or not they're ethical or not? I do think she has a medical skill there. That being said, it's interesting the way that decisive under pressure is phrased. Nothing in here says it has to be a right decision or a good decision or a decent. So I think she's very decisive under pressure. She can make a decision under pressure. That decision might be to claw up all the carpeting and chew things and whatnot, but it's a decision she's made. So yes, she made a decision under the pressure. Kind of similar to the blunt honesty, like, doesn't matter what she's saying, if it has any relevance to the situation, whatever, how many times they have to bleep it out on network TV, she's going to say whatever the hell she wants to. So I guess technically that's blunt honesty. Is it relevant? No, but it's there. And caring, I think deep down she actually, like, she doesn't hate the crew. She wants to care for the crew to some extent, whether or not that's using her medical chainsaw with no anesthetic and just regrowing them a limb later, whatever. She's going to care for the crew, but I don't think in a lovey-dovey way. She's definitely probably, I don't even know how I would give her like a 0.5 there, but she does care for the crew enough to want to keep them alive.
I think the word you're looking for is tolerate. Tolerate
Okay,
the
there you go.
existence of the crew.
She's willing to let them keep living on the ship if she can help.
Correct. She's willing to lend a helping hand to keep them alive.
There you go. And hunt some betazoids while she's at it.
PS2 Chipper says Ta'ana is decisive under pressure. Caring? Nah. Honest? Mostly. And then John says, don't forget Ta'ana's not human. We did not forget, friend. Mr. Captain 93 says, ask Shax about her bedside manner. We're going to skip that question.
I mean, she does really give her opinion. I will give that. That's true.
Dustin, thoughts?
So I'm going to start with blunt honesty, because the only time we've seen her not be honest was when she, that like doctors make the worst patients thing, and she doesn't even want to do her yearly physical and sends Tendi on a roundabout way to like try and keep her from getting her physical. That's the only time we see her not being honest. So, but when it comes to medical stuff, she's like a 6 out of 5 in blunt honesty. She is the most bluntly honest doctor we've talked about in these 2 weeks.
Yeah, she's the rude kind of blunt. Yeah.
Decisive under pressure. I agree with Josh. Like, yep, not necessarily the best decision, but she will make a snap decision, be it the right, wrong, or indifferent. So yeah, like that's like a 4.5 out of 5. And caring, I don't actually think she's like a 0.5 or like a negative. I'm going to give her a 2 out of 5 because I think she cares to the point that she wants to get you out of her sick bay. That is her goal. She wants to keep her sick bay free of anything. She cares enough that she doesn't want you to be sick, and she doesn't want to deal with your stuff.
Oh, she did care for, what's his name that we saw in the final episode? Nurse something?
Nurse
Westlake? Was it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She does have a decent relationship with another character with him, so okay.
That's not holodeck creepy. Yeah, there's also the scene where she pulls the lightning bolt out of Boimler's butt, and she's like, yes, I've done it. Like, this is going to be an incredible research paper. So there is some connection to the medical field that she has, aside from, just this is a thing that I'm doing because I have nothing better to do. So there is some part of her that has some kind of doctory feelings, even if it's the researchy side. I think she's super decisive under pressure, and I do sort of regret not adding makes good decisions, but whatever. It's done now. It's on the list. She doesn't make decisions. She makes them. I think her number one go-to is to maul somebody. And that's like never the right decision, except for when it was the Clickets. There was only time it was the right decision. She is bluntly honest in the bad ways, but she's never going to sugarcoat anything, and she's never going to lie to you about how bad your condition is ever. So that's good. And I don't think she cares. I think she's negative numbers on caring. I don't think she cares for any reason. I don't even think she cared when she helped Boimler, but at the end she was like, "Ooh, this could make a good paper." I feel that was more like a silver lining to the cloud of having a person in sickbay that she has to like put up with. So yeah, those are my thoughts. But she'd be great. She'd be great at stand-up. Yep, she'd probably be great at stand-up. I don't think I'd go and see her show though, because I think she'd be like a mean comic. Something tells me. But yeah, those are my thoughts. PS2 Chipper is like, Ta'ana is on his ship. So he's already claimed Ta'ana. So now we are at the end. Our final question, who would you pick out of our list, which is, and I'm just going to take this down for now. So our list includes Culber, Jurati, M'Benga, Chapel, and Ta'ana. Who would you pick as your primary care doctor, and who would you pick as your specialist from that list?
Yeah, I don't need to expand my list to 4 this week to try and justify anything. I'm gonna take the controversial position of Ta'ana as my primary.
Wow.
I appreciate the blunt honesty, and I do think she has a deep understanding of medicine. I think she's a pretty good doctor overall. Caring is helpful, but secondary, at least to me. I just want somebody that's gonna like actually get to the root of my problem, and I think she's pretty good at that. As far as a Specialist. I'm going to go with Mbanga. He may not have all of the other points, but he does have some specialty knowledge. And if I had the problems that he has the specialty knowledge of, I think I'd feel pretty good under Mbanga.
Josh?
I guess I kind of wish, not that that's really what we want to do. I kind of wish we could do the Mbanga Chapel like combo, like kind of pull them both as one unit. So I feel like that could be kind of a nice double team if you're going to have them both on your side. But I might have to go with, I just wish we knew more about Culber's actual medical acumen. Because everything about him makes me feel like I would want him as my doctor. But since we've never seen him cure a host of virulent diseases, we've never seen him deal with that many outbreaks, or I really can't make a good judgment call on how well he would actually perform the medical part. And I know that's not part of the questionnaire we've been doing here, but that kind of makes him a little less reputable in my mind. So I definitely think I would pick Mbanga as my specialist. Jurati's not even in the conversation. I mean, I guess for the sake of argument, I will assume that Culber is medically competent and has learned everything he needs to do. So I guess I'll go with him for my primary. At the very least, he'd be someone I'd feel comfortable going in to talk to about my problems before sending me to a specialist who could get the job done.
You could actually fix your problems.
Yeah. Kind of similar to what we were talking about with Bev last week, where it's like, I don't think she's a bad doctor, but in 6 seasons, I don't think we see her do enough doctoring to know how good she is.
Yeah. And I also feel like, well, so I left medically competent off the list because I just took that for granted that we're going to assume they all know medicine. Similar to next week's and the week after, we're talking about best engineers. We're going to assume they are engineers. Like, we're going to assume they know stuff about the ship. So it's not even in the list of things that they know. The only time I can think of Culber doing medical stuff really is season 5 with the boyfriend. What's the guy's name? The
Book?
No, not Book. The other boyfriend, the boyfriend of the crazy lady. Maul and Locke.
Oh,
yeah. When Locke was like in his little container and stuff, and Culber seemed to know stuff about stuff. I mean, not a lot because this is like a culture they've never experienced before in the sick bay, but he was like had the little container and was injecting things, so he seemed like he knew stuff. Anyways, Vanessa, primary and specialist.
I think for my primary, even though he isn't the most well-mannered and has some personal issues, who doesn't? Mbanga, I think he would be a competent primary doctor. I think he's very straightforward, and I admire that about him in terms of medical stuff. Specialist. I think maybe Culber. I think he's more of like, he could be fine with sort of stepping in when necessary and everything, just because, like, you know, especially like with mental health, he's wonderful with that. I'm sort of tossed up between, like the dynamic duo of Nurse Chapel and Mbanga, and I really enjoy Culber personally. So, yeah.
So who would you pick?
So I would pick Mbanga is my primary and
yes.
my Culber as the specialist.
Okay, so Culber won the toss up. Okay. So DJ Magic said the duo of Mbanga and Chapel. That's who I would pick. Mr. Captain also says that Chapel would be a great ship's counselor. I mean, she listens to Spock, so if she listens to others the way she listens to Spock, maybe. But I don't know if she really
listen? Does she really listen to what he's saying?
No, she just gets lost in his eyes.
She sort of like psychoanalyzes him in a little bit, which is and sort of like tries to appeal. Like there was like this tearing of like appealing to his Vulcan side and appealing to his human side, and she like thought like his human side was more an authentic version of him and stuff. I didn't really love that. It felt manipulative to me.
I think it was manipulative, but not on purpose. Like, I think it was her wanting him to like her. And so she's just constantly complimenting the things she can relate to. It's just human, Spock. It's just who you really are. And I love that about you. You know, I don't think she was like conniving, but I think it was like a knee jerk inside of her to be like, how can I make this guy like me? Which is why I'm like not sure how good she'd be as a ship's counselor, because I don't know if she'd give everyone that same amount of attention to their well-being. And, you know, if they broke up, if she'd be running to be like, let's talk about your breakup. I don't know. If she wasn't going to date them, I don't know if she'd be concerned.
Like, could she separate the personal and professional in a counselor situation? Because I'm not sure. Like, as a doctor, I think she has that ability. As a counselor, I think her emotions would kind of muddy the waters.
I feel like she'd use other people's examples in a counseling session. Like with you, you're like, oh, well, you'll never guess what Ortegas told me the other day.
When Ortegas was in here earlier, this is what I helped her with.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I don't think she can separate her emotions from the professional, even with medicine, because when Spock becomes human, she's like, I have to help him. I have to put him back the way he was, because that's the way I like him, and that's the way he needs to be, and that's how he'll be happy. Like, she was bending over backwards, staying up all night to fix her mistake and fix Spock. And while that's admirable and yay for Spock to have someone so devoted, I don't know if she'd be doing all that for anyone else that she wasn't romantically interested in. And I guess we won't know. Maybe we will in season 3. However, I would pick Chapel as my primary, even though she's a little bit less experienced. I do feel like she's always ready to go. And Culber's just he's too like cuddly for me. And Jurati's too psycho for me. And T'Ana is also too psycho for me. So there's really only 2 people on this list that I do like Culber. I do, but I just wouldn't like being his patient. I think I would like being his friend in a group of friends. I think I would like the energy he brings to a group. I think I would really like that. But I don't think I'd like too much one-on-one with him. Again, that's more of a Charisse thing than a Culber thing. That's like my own issues. But I would have Chapel as my primary, and I have M'Benga as my specialist just because of all his military experience. I feel like he'll figure things out. Like, I'm thinking of the episode where Una, like, there was no more plasma, and Una was like, give it to that other person. That's an order. And then when she wakes up, there's like a line connected to M'Benga's arm, and like he's donating blood to Una while he's also seeing another patient. And that just feels to me like this man is going to try to save my life. Like, no matter what. That's what I want in a specialist, right? I want someone who's going to think outside the box and be like, we're out of plasma. Oh, wait, I have some right here. You know, like, that's what I would want in a specialist. And I also feel like some of that military training just gave him more out of the box thinking than maybe someone who came up in Starfleet Medical and has only seen peacetime medicine might be accustomed to. Yeah, so I'd go with the dynamic duo as well. Well, let me know in the comments who you would want to go for. If you haven't put it in the chat yet, let me know, or put it down in the comments if you're watching on the replay. I want to thank you for watching live or on the replay, and thank you to my very special guests for joining me today. This was a super fun conversation. Join me next week, same place, same time, where we're going to be talking about the best engineers of Star Trek, and we're going to do the OG 5 shows. And the week after that, we'll do all the new Trek. So that's it for now, and I'll see you all next time.